Some stories begin with a celebration, a wedding, a promise, the beginning of a new chapter. But every now and then, a story begins with a question that refuses to disappear, no matter how many years pass. On the morning of June 18, 2011, the quiet mountain town of Willow Creek, Colorado, awoke beneath clear blue skies. The weather was perfect. The flowers had arrived. Guests filled the chapel. Photographers prepared their cameras. Family members embraced one another. Everything had been planned, down to the smallest detail. It was supposed to be the happiest day in the life of Emily Carter, a 27-year-old elementary school teacher, known throughout her community for her kindness, her patience, and her unwavering optimism. In just a few hours, she was going to marry the man she had loved for 6 years, Daniel Brooks. Their families believed they were witnessing the beginning of a lifetime together. No one, not even those closest to Emily, could have imagined that before the ceremony began, she would disappear. At exactly 11:42 that morning, a local farmer noticed a white sedan parked along a quiet county road, just a few miles from the church. The driver's door was standing open. Inside the vehicle, everything appeared ordinary. Emily's purse, her wallet, her phone, the wedding bouquet she had carried only moments before. Even the keys remained in the ignition. But there was one thing missing Emily. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no blood, no witnesses, no ransom demand. It was as though Emily Carter had simply vanished. Police launched one of the largest search operations the region had ever seen. Search dogs followed her scent into the surrounding forest. Helicopters scanned the mountains from above. Divers searched nearby lakes. Volunteers walked mile after mile through dense woodland. Nothing. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually, months became years. Hope slowly faded, but the questions never did. Then, 14 years later, during the renovation of an abandoned library, workers uncovered an old leather diary, hidden beneath loose floorboards. Its pages were worn with age. Most of the entries appeared ordinary, until investigators reached one folded page. Inside, they found a hand-drawn map, a single name, and a message that would force detectives to question everything they believed about Emily Carter's disappearance. Because if the diary was telling the truth, Emily's story had never been about a missing bride. It was about a secret someone had spent decades trying to bury. What really happened to Emily Carter? Why did she leave only hours before her wedding? Who made the anonymous phone calls? And why, after 14 years of silence, did someone finally want the truth to be found? Tonight we reopen the investigation. Together, we'll follow every clue, examine every piece of evidence, and uncover a story filled with unexpected twists, hidden motives, and impossible choices. This is the mystery of the bride who vanished before her wedding. And you're watching Midnight Observatory. To understand how Emily Carter disappeared, you first have to understand who she was. Those who knew Emily often described her with the same 3 words: kind, patient, reliable. She wasn't someone who chased attention. She never wanted to be the center of the room. Instead, she found joy in the smallest moments. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee. An afternoon helping children discover the joy of reading. An evening spent with family, sharing stories around the dinner table. At 27 years old, Emily Carter had become one of the most respected teachers at Willow Creek Elementary School. Every Friday afternoon, her classroom transformed into a small reading corner. Her students gathered around, listening as she brought stories to life. Parents admired her dedication. Her colleagues respected her kindness. And her students absolutely adored her. Many believed Emily had a rare gift. She made people feel heard. She remembered birthdays. She stayed after school to help struggling students. She volunteered at community events. And she never expected recognition for any of it. But outside the classroom, there was one person who knew Emily even better: Daniel Brooks. They first met 6 years earlier during a community fundraiser to restore Willow Creek's historic town hall. Daniel, a young architect, had volunteered to help redesign the aging building. Emily was organizing activities for local children. Their first conversation lasted only a few minutes, but something clicked. Neither of them could explain it. A week later, Daniel invited Emily out for coffee. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner became weekend hikes. Weekend hikes became long drives through the Colorado mountains where they spent hours talking about everything and nothing. Unlike many couples, they didn't build their relationship online. They built it quietly, one conversation at a time, one memory at a time, one ordinary day after another. And somehow, those ordinary days became extraordinary. In the spring of 2010, Daniel asked Emily to meet him at Willow Lake. Just before sunset, he reached into the pocket of his old denim jacket and nervously pulled out a small velvet box. Before he could finish asking the question, Emily was already smiling. She laughed. She wiped away a tear. And then, she said yes. Their family celebrated together that evening. Friends described it as one of the happiest nights Willow Creek had seen in years. Emily's mother, Margaret Carter, often said Daniel wasn't just marrying her daughter. He was becoming another son. The wedding date was set for June 18, 2011. Nearly a year was spent planning every detail. Emily personally chose the flowers, white roses, her grandmother's favorite. She selected the historic chapel overlooking the valley. She wrote handwritten thank you notes for every guest. She carefully arranged the seating chart, making sure relatives who hadn't seen one another in years would sit together again. Nothing was left to chance. Or so everyone believed. Then, about a week before the wedding, something changed. Emily began receiving anonymous phone calls. The phone would ring. She would answer. And on the other end, there was only silence. At first, she dismissed them as prank calls. Daniel encouraged her to report them. Emily simply smiled. It's probably nothing. But the calls continued. Sometimes early in the morning. Sometimes late at night. Always silent. Always from an unknown number. Margaret noticed another change. Emily seemed distracted. Several times, she caught her daughter staring out of the kitchen window, lost in thought. Whenever she asked what was wrong, Emily gave the same answer. Just wedding nerves. It sounded convincing. Planning a wedding could overwhelm anyone. But looking back, there were moments that suddenly seemed important. 3 days before the ceremony, Emily visited the Willow Creek Public Library. She remained inside for almost 2 hours. Curiously, she didn't borrow a single book. Instead, she asked the librarian to retrieve old town property records. No one questioned it. The librarian assumed she was preparing material for one of her school projects. Years later, that simple visit would become one of the most important clues in the entire investigation. The evening before the wedding, family and friends gathered for the rehearsal dinner. There was laughter, music, stories from childhood, embarrassing speeches, and endless photographs. Daniel couldn't stop smiling. Emily looked genuinely happy. The couple shared one final dance beneath warm strings of lights. For everyone watching, it felt like the perfect ending to a beautiful love story. But at exactly 9:17 that evening, The photographer captured one final image. Emily stood alone outside the reception hall. She wasn't looking toward the celebration. She wasn't looking toward the cameras. She was staring into the darkness, beyond the parking lot. Her smile had disappeared. No one knew what had captured her attention, or who might have been watching from the shadows. The next morning, the town awoke early. Florists delivered bouquets. Musicians tuned their instruments. Guests checked into nearby hotels. The chapel doors opened. Everything was ready. Everyone was waiting. And somewhere, without anyone realizing it, the countdown had already begun. A countdown that would end with one of Colorado's most baffling disappearances. In just a few short hours, Emily Carter would leave home wearing her wedding dress. No one who saw her that morning could have imagined it would be the last time they would ever see her. June 18th, 2011. The sun rose over Willow Creek just after 6 o'clock. The weather couldn't have been more perfect. Clear blue skies, a gentle breeze, not a single cloud. For everyone attending Emily Carter's wedding, it promised to be one of the happiest days of the year. Emily woke just before 6:30 that morning. According to her mother, she seemed unusually calm. She smiled, made herself a cup of coffee, and quietly sat on the back porch, watching the sunrise. Margaret Carter would later tell investigators that Emily hardly spoke during breakfast. Not because she seemed upset, but because she appeared deep in thought. When Margaret finally asked if she was nervous, Emily smiled softly. "I've waited a long time for today." Those would become the last words her mother would ever hear from her in person. By 8 o'clock, Emily arrived at Bella Rosa Bridal Studio. Her bridesmaids were already waiting. Security cameras captured her walking through the front entrance, wearing jeans, a white sweater, and oversized sunglasses. She greeted everyone with hugs. The atmosphere inside was filled with excitement. Coffee cups sat beside makeup mirrors. Hairstylists hurried from chair to chair. Friends laughed. Music played quietly in the background. Emily laughed with them. She posed for photographs. She even comforted one nervous bridesmaid who admitted she was more anxious than the bride herself. Nothing about Emily's behavior suggested that anything was wrong. By 9:45, everything was ready. Emily stepped into her wedding dress. The ivory satin gown fit perfectly. Her veil rested gently across her shoulders. The bouquet of white roses had just arrived. The photographer captured dozens of portraits, some joyful, some candid. One photograph, however, would later become the focus of the investigation. Emily stood beside a large window. Instead of looking toward the camera, she was staring outside. Her expression had changed. Her smile was gone. Years later, detectives enlarged that photograph. Across the street, parked beneath a row of oak trees, was a black SUV. Its windows were heavily tinted. No license plate could be identified. No driver could be seen. Whether it was connected to Emily's disappearance was something investigators could never prove, but the timing was impossible to ignore. At exactly 10:12 that morning, Emily received a phone call. It lasted only 14 seconds. Phone records confirmed the number wasn't registered to anyone. No recording existed. No one knows exactly what was said. But one bridesmaid remembered hearing Emily quietly respond, "I understand. I'll come." Moments later, Emily returned to the room. She smiled and calmly explained that she needed to make one quick stop before heading to the church. She said she had forgotten a family keepsake, a silver locket that had belonged to her grandmother. Margaret immediately offered to go instead. Emily gently refused. "It'll only take 20 minutes. She kissed her mother on the cheek, promised she'd be back before 11, picked up her bouquet, and walked toward the parking lot. No one tried to stop her. No one imagined they were watching Emily Carter for the very last time. Traffic cameras later showed her white sedan heading east along County Road 16. She was alone. She obeyed every speed limit. She stopped at every intersection. Nothing appeared unusual. At 10:31, another camera recorded her turning onto a narrow rural road, the same road leading toward her childhood home. But investigators would later discover Emily never arrived. No neighbors saw her. No businesses recorded her passing. Somewhere along that quiet stretch of road, something happened. Back at the chapel, guests continued arriving. Daniel Brooks stood inside a small waiting room, adjusting his tie. His best man joked that he had checked his watch at least 20 times. Everyone assumed the bride was simply running late. The ceremony was delayed, first by 15 minutes, then another 15. The musicians continued playing. Guests whispered among themselves. Margaret tried calling Emily. No answer. Daniel called. Straight to voicemail. Bridesmaids sent text messages. Nothing. The excitement that had filled the chapel only an hour earlier slowly gave way to confusion, then to worry. At exactly 11:42, a local farmer driving home noticed a white sedan parked beside County Road 16. The driver's door was standing open. The engine was off. The headlights were still on. Believing someone might need help, he pulled over. Inside the passenger seat, he found a bouquet of white roses. Folded neatly beside it was Emily's bridal veil. Her phone remained inside the center console. Her purse still contained her wallet, her driver's license, her credit cards, cash, everything except Emily. The farmer immediately dialed 911. Within minutes, the quiet country road had become a crime scene. Police vehicles surrounded the area. Investigators photographed every inch of the car. Search teams rushed into the surrounding forest. No one realized it yet, but hidden in the soft mud beside the road was one small detail that would change the entire direction of the investigation. One trail of footprints led away from the car. None came back. Within minutes, the peaceful country road transformed into a full-scale investigation. Police officers sealed off the area. Yellow tape stretched across the roadside. Detectives photographed every inch of Emily's white sedan. Forensic specialists searched the vehicle, inside and out. Nothing appeared disturbed. The keys were still in the ignition. Her handbag rested on the passenger seat. Her phone hadn't been damaged. There were no signs of panic. No broken glass. No blood. No indication of a struggle. If something had happened here, it had happened quietly. Detective Ryan Foster arrived shortly after noon. He had spent nearly 20 years investigating missing persons. As he slowly walked around the vehicle, one detail immediately caught his attention. The driver's door had been left completely open. Experienced investigators know people rarely leave a vehicle that way unless they're expecting to return almost immediately. It suggested Emily hadn't planned to disappear. She believed she'd only be gone for a moment. Crime scene technicians searched the ground around the car. At first, they found very little. Then, one investigator noticed a line of footprints leading away from the roadside. Only one set. Women's shoes. The impressions matched the heels Emily had been wearing that morning. The footprints continued toward a narrow path, leading into the woods. Search teams followed them carefully. For nearly 200 yards, the trail remained clear. Then, without warning, the footprints simply ended. There was no second trail, no signs of anyone carrying her, no tire tracks, nothing. It was as though Emily had vanished into thin air. News spread through Willow Creek with incredible speed. Within hours, the wedding guests had become search volunteers. Daniel Brooks refused to leave the area. Still wearing his wedding suit, he joined officers walking through dense woodland, calling Emily's name again, and again, and again. There was never a reply. As daylight faded, more volunteers arrived. Neighbors, friends, firefighters, local hunters, familiar with the mountains. Search dogs were brought in from neighboring counties. The dogs successfully picked up Emily's scent near the vehicle. They followed it into the trees, across a shallow stream, toward a rocky hillside. Then they stopped. Handlers tried again. The same result. The scent simply disappeared. It made no sense. Detectives considered every possibility. Had someone been waiting for her? Did she willingly meet another person? Had she entered another vehicle? Or had she planned this herself? Each theory raised even more questions. That evening, investigators interviewed everyone who had spoken to Emily during her final 24 hours. Her bridesmaids described her as calm. The photographer said she looked happy. The makeup artist remembered Emily humming quietly while getting ready. No one reported fear. No one mentioned an argument. No one believed she intended to run away. Then detectives learned about the anonymous phone calls. Margaret Carter explained they had started several days before the wedding. Always from an unknown number. Always silent. Daniel admitted he had urged Emily to report them. She insisted they were harmless. Phone company records confirmed the calls had occurred, but tracing them proved impossible. The numbers had been routed through disposable prepaid devices. Whoever made those calls had taken great care to remain invisible. Meanwhile, forensic analysts completed their first examination of Emily's car. No fingerprints, other than Emily's and her family's. No damaged locks, no evidence of forced entry, no DNA belonging to a stranger. Everything inside the vehicle suggested Emily had left willingly. But willingly didn't necessarily mean voluntarily. One discovery puzzled investigators more than anything else. Emily's engagement ring, worth several $1,000s, was still on her finger, according to every photograph taken that morning. Yet when her car was found, the ring was gone. No one could explain it. Had she taken it off herself? Had someone else removed it? Or had it been lost somewhere, along a trail no one had yet discovered? As the investigation entered its second day, state police joined the search. Helicopters flew low across the forests. Thermal imaging cameras scanned the hillsides. Mounted search teams covered miles of rough terrain. Divers searched nearby lakes and rivers. Nothing. No clothing. No jewelry. No evidence. No Emily. The mystery only deepened. Then, late on the second evening, an elderly woman contacted the sheriff's office. She claimed that on the morning of the wedding, she had seen Emily's white sedan parked beside the road. But it wasn't alone. A black SUV was parked directly behind it. The same type of vehicle that appeared in the wedding photograph. She couldn't identify the driver. She couldn't read the license plate. And by the time officers returned to the area, the SUV was gone. For the first time, detectives had a possible lead. A vehicle. A witness. And a question that refused to go away. Who was inside the black SUV, and why? Were they waiting for Emily Carter? The report of the black SUV changed everything. Until that moment, investigators had been searching for a missing bride. Now, they were searching for someone who may have been waiting for her. Detective Ryan Foster ordered officers to review every traffic camera, gas station recording, and security system within a 50-mile radius. Hundreds of hours of footage were examined. Most revealed nothing unusual. But one camera, mounted outside a small convenience store, captured something investigators couldn't ignore. At exactly 10:26 that morning, a black SUV passed the intersection, less than 5 minutes behind Emily's white sedan. The video quality was poor. The license plate couldn't be read, but investigators identified the vehicle as an older model, one rarely seen in Willow Creek. The search widened immediately. Days turned into weeks. The SUV never appeared again. Meanwhile, Detective Foster returned to the Willow Creek Public Library. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily's visit 3 days before the wedding. Why would a bride, days away from getting married, spend 2 hours reviewing old property records? The librarian, Helen Morris, remembered Emily clearly. She told detectives Emily hadn't been searching for family history. She had requested maps, old land surveys, ownership records, dating back more than 70 years. One location appeared repeatedly, an abandoned estate known locally as Ashcroft Manor. The mansion had once belonged to Arthur Bennett, a wealthy businessman whose family disappeared from public life decades earlier. The estate had remained empty for nearly 40 years. Local children avoided it. Teenagers told ghost stories about it. Most residents never went near the property. Detective Foster wasn't interested in ghost stories. He was interested in facts. And the facts were unusual. Emily had copied several pages from the property archive. She had taken handwritten notes. She had even sketched part of the surrounding woodland. No one knew why. Officers searched Ashcroft Manor the following morning. The mansion stood in silence. Broken windows, collapsed ceilings. Nature had slowly reclaimed the once grand estate. Inside, dust covered nearly every surface. Rooms had been untouched for years, or so it seemed. One detective noticed a section of floor where the dust had been disturbed. Fresh footprints. Someone had been inside recently. The team searched every room, the attic, the cellar, hidden storage spaces. Nothing, no sign of Emily. No sign of anyone else. Just as officers prepared to leave, one investigator discovered something unexpected. Tucked behind a loose brick was an old photograph. The picture had faded with time. It showed a group of people standing outside Ashcroft Manor more than 50 years earlier. Most of the faces were unknown. Except one. Arthur Bennett. Standing beside him was a little girl. Detective Foster froze. The child looked remarkably similar to Emily Carter. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Same eyes, same smile, same distinctive dimple. Could it simply be coincidence? Or was there a connection that no one had ever known? Investigators began tracing Emily's family history. Birth records, marriage certificates, land ownership documents. Everything appeared normal, until they reached Emily's grandmother. One record didn't match the others. A surname had been changed. No explanation, no legal documentation, only a handwritten correction made decades earlier. When detectives questioned Margaret Carter, she seemed genuinely surprised. She insisted her mother had never spoken about the family's past. She knew almost nothing about life before Willow Creek. That answer created even more questions. If Emily had discovered something hidden within her own family history, could it explain the anonymous phone calls, the mysterious library visit, the black SUV, or even her disappearance? As investigators dug deeper, Another witness finally came forward. A retired mail carrier who had delivered letters throughout Willow Creek for more than 30 years. He remembered something everyone else had forgotten. About a month before the wedding, Emily had started receiving handwritten envelopes. No return address. No postage stamps. Someone had delivered them by hand. He only noticed because they appeared every Tuesday, without fail. Detectives searched Emily's home. No letters were found. Not one. Someone had either taken them or Emily had hidden them herself. Then, for the first time since the investigation began, Detective Foster admitted something he had been unwilling to consider. Maybe Emily hadn't been chosen at random. Maybe someone had been preparing for this, long before her wedding day. And if that was true, the disappearance of Emily Carter hadn't started on June 18th. It had begun many years earlier. For nearly 6 months, the investigation stalled. Search efforts continued. Tips poured in from across the country. Most led nowhere. Some were deliberate hoaxes. Others were nothing more than false hope. Slowly, the headlines disappeared. Television crews packed up. National reporters moved on to the next story. But in Willow Creek, Emily Carter's disappearance was never forgotten. Detective Ryan Foster refused to close the case. Every few weeks, he returned to the evidence room, reading witness statements again, studying photographs, searching for something, anything, that everyone else had overlooked. Years passed. Then one decade became another. The case remained open, unsolved, until the spring of 2025. Workers had begun restoring the old Willow Creek Public Library, a building that had stood for more than a century. During the renovation, one contractor noticed several loose floorboards beneath a forgotten storage room. When the boards were lifted, they uncovered a small metal box. It had been hidden there for decades. Inside, there were only 3 items: a rusted key, a yellowed photograph, and a worn leather diary. The diary contained no name, no address, no indication of who had written it. Most of its pages described ordinary life in Willow Creek many years earlier: weather, harvests, town gatherings. Nothing unusual. Investigators almost dismissed it entirely. Then Detective Foster reached the final section. The handwriting changed. The sentences became shorter, more urgent, as though the writer had become frightened. One entry read, "There are things buried beneath this town that must never be uncovered." Another said, "They're watching anyone who asks too many questions." Then came the final page. Folded neatly inside was a hand-drawn map. A map of Ashcroft Manor. Several locations had been marked with small circles. One point had been highlighted repeatedly. Beside it, the writer had added just 3 words. "Start here first." Detective Foster immediately assembled a search team. Within 24 hours, officers returned to Ashcroft Manor. This time, they weren't searching the house. They followed the map. The marked location led them beyond the mansion, through dense woodland to an overgrown stone well. It had long since dried up. Most people walked past it without a second glance. Investigators lowered cameras into the narrow shaft. At first, they saw only loose rocks. Then, something caught the light. A small metal object. Several hours later, the object was brought to the surface. It was badly weathered, but still recognizable. A silver locket. Margaret Carter identified it immediately. It had belonged to Emily's grandmother, the very keepsake Emily claimed she had forgotten on the morning of her wedding. The discovery stunned investigators. If the locket had been hidden there all along, then Emily, or someone connected to her had reached Ashcroft Manor. But the mystery deepened. Forensic testing revealed something unexpected. The locket hadn't been exposed to the weather for 14 years. It had been placed inside the well, much more recently. Someone had returned. Someone who knew exactly where to leave it. Detective Foster realized the case had changed overnight. This was no longer just a cold case. Someone was still connected to it. Someone was still watching. And perhaps someone wanted the investigation to follow a very specific path. But why? Was the diary revealing the truth? Or leading detectives into a carefully planned trap? One thing was certain. After 14 years of silence, the mystery surrounding Emily Carter had come back to life. And for the first time in years, Detective Foster believed they were closer than ever to discovering what really happened. The discovery of the silver locket reignited the investigation. For the first time in 14 years, Detective Ryan Foster wasn't looking at old evidence. He was following a new trail. Forensic teams returned to Ashcroft Manor. This time, they searched every inch of the property. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the surrounding land. Specialists examined underground chambers, collapsed tunnels, and forgotten foundations. Days passed. Then, on the fourth morning, the radar revealed something unexpected. A narrow underground passage, hidden beneath layers of stone and decades of overgrown vegetation. The entrance had been deliberately concealed. Heavy rocks, old timber, thick roots. Someone had gone to great lengths to make sure it would never be found. Carefully, the search team cleared the entrance. The tunnel stretched deep beneath the estate. Cold, silent, undisturbed. Their flashlights illuminated walls, built long before modern records existed. Near the end of the passage, investigators found a small wooden room. Inside, there was no treasure, no secret vault. Only a desk, an old lantern, several empty shelves, and one locked metal cabinet. The rusted key, found inside the diary's metal box, fit perfectly. When the cabinet opened, everyone inside the room fell silent. It contained dozens of documents, property deeds, family letters, financial records, newspaper clippings, everything carefully organized, as though someone expected they would eventually be discovered. Among the papers, Detective Foster found a sealed envelope. Across the front, only 2 words had been written. For Emily. Inside was another letter. Its paper had yellowed with age. The handwriting matched the final pages of the diary. The letter revealed that Emily's grandmother had once lived at Ashcroft Manor. She had hidden a truth from her family for more than 50 years. Arthur Bennett, the wealthy owner of the estate, wasn't simply a local businessman. He was Emily's biological great-grandfather. A bitter inheritance dispute had divided the family decades earlier. To escape the conflict, Emily's grandmother changed her surname, left Willow Creek, and never spoke about the estate again. But someone else had never forgotten. Months before the wedding, Emily began researching her family's history. She discovered the old records, visited the library, and quietly uncovered the truth. She wasn't searching for money. She wasn't chasing an inheritance. She simply wanted answers. But she wasn't the only one. Looking, detectives finally identified the anonymous phone calls. Not through technology, but through witness interviews. An elderly attorney who had once represented the Bennett family admitted that shortly before his death, one of his clients became obsessed with locating the last living heir. He feared that once the truth became public, decades of hidden property transfers would collapse. Millions of dollars were at stake. According to the attorney, someone contacted Emily repeatedly, not to threaten her, but to convince her to meet before the wedding. Emily agreed. She wanted the truth. She believed she would be back within minutes. Instead, everything changed. Investigators now believe Emily met the mysterious individual near County Road 16. She willingly stepped away from her car, taking nothing with her, because she expected to return almost immediately. What happened during that meeting can never be known with complete certainty. The only living witness never came forward. The person believed to have arranged the meeting died several years later, taking many answers to the grave. Yet one mystery remained. If Emily hadn't returned, where had she gone? The answer arrived from the final document inside the cabinet. Attached to the back of the envelope was a notarized statement dated just 2 weeks after Emily disappeared. It described an agreement made voluntarily. Emily had chosen to leave Willow Creek, not because she feared for her life, but because exposing the truth immediately would have destroyed innocent members of her family. Instead, she accepted a new identity and disappeared completely. Only 3 people ever knew where she went. All of them are now gone. Detective Foster spent months verifying every detail. The documents were authentic. The signatures matched. The legal records were genuine. Every missing piece finally fit together. Emily Carter had not vanished without a trace. She had walked away carrying the weight of a family secret that had remained buried for generations. Her disappearance was never random. It was the final chapter of a story that had begun long before she was born. Even today, people still visit the quiet road where Emily Carter's white sedan was found. The flowers have long since faded. The police tape is gone. The headlines have been forgotten. But the questions still linger. How well do we really know the people we love? How many family secrets remain hidden, waiting for the right moment to surface? Detective Ryan Foster officially closed the case 14 years and 3 months after Emily disappeared. For him, it wasn't a victory. It was simply an answer. Not every mystery ends with flashing lights or dramatic arrests. Sometimes the truth is quieter, more complicated, more human. Emily Carter was never just the missing bride of Willow Creek. She was a woman who uncovered a forgotten chapter of her family's history, a chapter that changed the course of her life forever. Whether every decision she made was the right one is something only she could truly answer. Perhaps that's what makes this story so unforgettable. Not the disappearance, not the investigation, not even the secrets hidden beneath Ashcroft Manor, but the impossible choice between protecting the people you love and living the life you had always dreamed of. Some mysteries leave us with answers, others leave us with understanding, and sometimes those are not the same thing. Thank you for joining us as we reopened one of Willow Creek's most haunting mysteries. If you enjoyed this investigation and you'd like to explore more true mysteries, unsolved disappearances, forgotten histories, and stories that blur the line between fact and legend, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new investigation. Until next time, stay curious, question everything, and remember, every small detail has a story to tell. This is Midnight Observatory.